Okay guys, so today I have a new video for you. This is going to be the latest deck doctor for Alliance Insight format. There may be one suitor profile in here. And I'm going to try to do two things in this video. First of all, for people who aren't really following or not part of the Discord, show you what the variance looks like across what people are building. Like, are people all playing the same thing? Or are there different strategies you can play in White Forest post ALIN? So like, ratios or other engines you put in or whatever. And the second thing is maybe to give some feedback on ideas or concepts or ratios that people are playing, which I'm sure some people will disagree on. And that's the great part about joining the Discord. So if you want to do that, we talk like pretty much all the time. I'm very active in it, and feel free to do so. Okay, so for the first one is by Cyber. Shout out to Cyber for talking in the Discord all the time. So he says this would be a cool opportunity for a Magus' build. It's the medium combo package that wants to do double lock and generate a Mechaba or Zeroa fusion alongside it. So I personally am a very big fan of the Magus stuff because even though it does require a few spots in the extra deck, if you are not playing Fiendsmith, then you do have the space for it. If you are playing Fiendsmith, I don't think this is possible, or you maybe could do it, but it'd have to be in your side deck. So if you don't know what these cards do, basically Spoon, this is one of the new cards that I can't remember when this is coming out. I think it's coming out pretty soon. So this card is a light spellcaster, so it's searchable off of Arciela. So, if you draw it, it's no problem, and if you want to search it, then it's fine. And this card searches another Magus card. So this one, the Crowley card, can be treated as Alistair the Invoker, and is basically like a Poplar. So, if you have drawn the Spoon, or you search the Spoon, and then you search for the Alistair, and then he's added to the hand, and then he can special summon himself, and then he has another effect where when he's summoned, he can perform a fusion summon. And because he's counted as Alistair, it means that you can summon Mechaba. And because you would have searched it off of Spoon, which is a light monster, you already have the correct attribute to make Mechaba. So the one thing to note about this package, and like one very important part of point of comparison across different packages you could play, is there's a very big difference between having an Omni Negate or some type of negate earlier in your combo versus later in your combo. So when I show the Delta of Invitation thing where you make Vergis before Droll, it's important that you have access to the Omni before you've committed your White Forest engine. So there is an argument to play, 3 Spoon. It does lose to Droll, but so does your entire deck. Because if you start with Spoon, then you can basically start with Mechaba before you've done any White Forest stuff. Whereas if you search for the Spoon with Arciela in the middle of your combo, it's not that it's win more per se, like it is another type of interaction on your board, but it's just less insulated than if you had hard drawn it. Okay, what else? I think the ratios of non-engine look pretty decent to me. There's 1 Phileas, 1 Curse. I think people were debating whether you could even play more Curse, but I think that in the OCG, at least, and what I've seen people test so far, everyone has just settled on 1 Curse and 1 Phileas. So I don't really have much else to say about this. I think this looks like a pretty good list. The Drua card, I'm really not sold on this yet, to be honest. I think that it's definitely a flex spot, but if you're not playing the Fiendsmith stuff and you have like some freedom to determine the size of the packages you're playing in here, then, I guess maybe you do have space for that. The only other thing I would suggest is... Well, no, if you're not on... So the Sinful Spoils of the White Forest card, for people who have been like keeping up with White Forest recently, is usually important. Maybe not the only way, but it's usually important for the anti-Nib line. Because you need like an additional name to be able to use Hallowed to make either Saint Azamina or Saint Azamina, or just Moa Regina to bring back your Diabel from the grave. But if you're not playing Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, I guess that doesn't matter. So anyhow, this looks pretty good to me. Okay, so for the next one, oh boy, so this is 60 cards. So he claims 22-ish starters, plus 4 Fiendsmith, 26-ish non-engine, 2 True Bricks, Hallowed Azamina and Wake Up Centurion, and 2 Traps. He says combining engines gives multiple pushes into a board or setting up a board. The win condition is some combination of Blazars and hand traps. Okay, so this is an important thing when you're deck building, is that you have some game plan in mind. And if your game plan is a particular win condition, like looping Blazars, then let's see how well it looks like the deck actually is built to achieve that. It says White Forest is a powerful engine for setting up Ilia Sylvia while also being a better starter for Centurion than Centurion. Primera Trudea at 2 is because they need to be placed from deck by stand-up, but are also starters on their own. That point, I noticed this when I was last testing Centurion, which was a little while ago. If you draw the Centurion cards and you no longer have them in deck and you were just playing like one of everything, you pretty much have bricked your entire combo, or you have to go completely out of your way to do a really horrible combo that will lose to any type of interaction. So if they are counted as starters, and the cool thing is having access to Azet is cool if you draw like the Centurion Primera, because the type of card like Sylvie where it could get impermed or veilered or whatever, and if you have an extension like this, which is very unlikely you draw them together, but it's just a cool extension because this is a non-tuner and you just continue playing. What else? So most common bridges are Ciela and Murcielago for Auxilla to search stand-up, and resetting Hallowed for Ilia Sylvia. All right, so obviously I have not tested something that is like this before, so I can't really comment too much on the game plan strategies, but just looking over the ratios here, I think that because the quality of starter greatly differs in White Forest, they're usually cards that you would prefer to draw over others, even if other cards are technically starters. Like, Tails, for example, even if it was live, like let's say that you started your turn with like Black Witch and you had Tails in your hand, you obviously don't want to start your combo with Tails, right? Like you'd rather search the Tails or have drawn the Tails and be able to pitch it so you get value off of it and can still search with it later. So I don't know if I'm fully convinced that this 60 card way is the best way to do it. I do think that it does make sense that if you add as long as you have like actual good non-engine to add, the quality of your non-engine can be pretty stable, and the percentage of you drawing, at least 2 hand traps every single game is probably going to be relatively stable. But I don't know if you can say the same for the starters here. Like Stand Up and Oath are super high quality starters. Primera and Trudea are less good because they commit your normal. I guess there aren't that many normals in the deck, but you would typically be searching your normal, wouldn't you? So honestly, I'm not sure. I feel like this might suffer from having like too much variance in the quality of your hands, even if you're technically drawing starters versus extenders. But honestly, I don't know what to say about that one, okay? So, okay. This guy says, this is the list I'm currently testing for Alliance Insight and might bring it to Austrian Nationals, but I'm torn between White Forest, Christian, and Unchained. Okay, so first of all, I think that a Stellar is completely... Actually, I was going to say optional. I don't even think it's optional. I think this card is just not good anymore. And there was maybe some reason that you could consider playing it before Alliance Insight, because you would have another starter technically, and maybe you had ways to check for certain hand traps to guarantee that it would resolve. Or if you're playing the toys, then this card is obviously amazing. But everyone's kind of off that, and there's not really space for it in Alliance Insight. So I think this card is just not good. I think that it conflicts with your normal, and it doesn't matter about the actual like number of normals in your deck, because you will, in every single turn you can possibly imagine, always prefer to search Sylvie because it's a tuner. Even if it doesn't resolve, it's still a body that stays on field. Kind of like how Ryzeals get to play. Like if you start your turn by summoning Ext and they go Imperm, as long as you have any other level 4 body in your entire hand, it didn't matter that they Impermed it, and Sylvie's kind of the same thing for us. Whereas the Esteller is useless. This doesn't do anything. Like, you summon this card, there's nothing else that works with it. Having Azet in hand, you can't do anything with those that's actually good. So yeah, I think this card is just not good, and I'm not sure if there's a reason to play it in Alliance Insight at all. One thing about Rusia, because we've had some discussion about this in the Discord, is that Rusia, in my opinion, is optional based on whether or not it's actually part of your game plan. And I noticed that in the extra deck here, there are no rank 4s. So for example, one thing that I thought was excellent when you played the toys, but also just in general, if you are designing your game plan this way, is to play something like Gallant Granite. So in your standard combo, whether this is post-side or in your main deck, you can use the Sylvie that you shuffle back the Arciela from grave for to get back from grave, and then the Rusia that you search as part of your combo to make a Gallant Granite to search for a nib, and then you have an additional extremely strong layer of interaction. And you may say, oh, if you search the nib, the opponent knows you have nib, so what? You have an entire board as well. Like, playing through nib that you know about with no board is not the same as if you have a board and they have to deal with it and then play through the nib. So there is nib in the deck, but there's no Gallant Granite, so I don't know. I feel like the Rusia is kind of pointless here. I don't think that it's bad. I just don't think that it contributes to the game plan. And I feel like the thing about playing cards like Gallant Granite is if you get interrupted enough to where you can still play, but you can't get to the Rusia, it doesn't matter. You just don't make the Gallant, But when you high roll, or when you are successfully able to play through your interactions and still get to Rusia, then you have like a meaningful ceiling upgrade, not just a random card. So that's my main comment on that. Let's see. So 3 field spell, I feel like that's probably going to be standard. 1 witch, 1 Diabells. I'll talk about that later. I think that this is going to be a droll format in the TCG, so I think you actually have to play 3 droll, and there's nothing you can do about it. Mitsurugi is going to be crazy next format. Malice, a lot of their hands have to play into droll now because, well, actually, I haven't tested enough Malice post Alliance Insight to say, but right now, they do kind of play into droll accidentally a lot. There are... I think the rest of this looks kind of standard. I don't really have too much else to say about this. So, yeah. Okay, now this guy says with and without Fiendsmith with no other explanation. So this one is the Fiendsmith version. So there's 1 tracked and 3 engraver. I don't really like that. I feel like if you're on 3 engraver, you should play 2 tracks just because you don't want to have a possible hand where you've drawn the tracked and engraver, or you have drawn tracked and you draw into an engraver later and now the engraver can't do anything. But also just like if you're playing the Fiendsmith stuff, these cards are just broken. So like, why wouldn't you want the most broken cards in your deck? Also, tracked is the one that plays into droll less, whereas engraver obviously plays into droll completely. Okay, what else? So, looking at the extra deck, I think this looks pretty standard to me. The Sol is debatable. I think a lot of people don't play this card. The guy who got top 32 at the recent YCS was playing Sol for Sinful Spoils of the White Forest with the Fiendsmith stuff. But this build, wait, did I just not see it, or is it not here? So this build is not playing Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, which you don't have to play. I was just mentioning that it does have some synergy there. So I don't know. I think this list looks pretty good though. I think you can go a little bit above 40 now that you have the field spell, because this is like the highest quality starter you could possibly imagine. Yeah, I don't know. I think this looks pretty good. And for the next one, so this is without Fiendsmith, I guess, which means that we're playing 40 now. So one of the things that happens if you take Fiendsmith out is usually you either have to play some other supplementary engine that actually helps you play, or you're taking advantage of more extra deck space so you can fit in more Azamina stuff. I feel like the Saint Azamina, unless it is a meta call and good against particular decks, and the Mo Regina are a lot less impactful when you're not on Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, because that like anti-nib line is, if people still haven't seen this, I'll make a video on it, but the anti-nib line with Sinful Spoils of the White Forest is so good just in general. There's really no reason to not sequence your plays that way, that I feel like you're not fully using the Saint and the Mo Regina if you don't play that card. The only actual like trap in here is Morian, because everything else is either like a hand trap or a part of your combo. So I feel like you could even play 41 and go Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. And obviously there's like enough flex in here where you could play Guardian Chimera too. And if it was me, I would probably take out the Jura for the Guardian Chimera. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the like cleanest, least brickiest versions I've seen, but it also may have some low roll hands where you don't draw a lot of engine. So I don't know. I feel like Sinful Spoils of the White Forest could be helpful for giving you a little bit more ceiling because you don't have the Fiendsmith stuff. Okay, so I wanted to submit this build for your feedback. I took it to locals yesterday and got 3rd with it, but I know post Alliance Insight it will be better, but just wanted to know your thoughts on the best build for White Forest for now until we get the set. Okay, so this is Supreme Darkness format. So here, 45 cards with 1 day of peace. That's kind of crazy. So what? Oh, with the Centurion cards. Okay, so first of all, I think that when you're putting engines together like this that make your deck more high roll, so it's not the same as playing Fiendsmith, right? Like if you draw a Fiendsmith card, like that's great. That card is broken. If you don't draw it, it doesn't matter. You can make it through Moon anyhow. But when you draw cards like these, where it actually really does substantially change your line of play if you draw it, because you have to consider which normal summon are you going to commit. Because it's not just Sylvie's and Primera and Trudea, but there's also a Stellar, which again I think is not a good card. Even now, I think that it can make your hands too high rolly. And if you were going for that, maybe you should play more Azet, because those are the cards that actually work properly with the Centurion stuff, because you can continue playing at least if you summon this card. Super Poly, I guess that's like a call for your locals. Main decking Scourge, I don't think is acceptable. You already have, like, aside from being able to draw on cloggy weird stuff, you are also playing like the Wake Up, which is a super brick. You're playing Hallowed, which is a super brick. You're playing Scourge, which is also a super brick. You really would only side this in going first, and then Phalanx is also pretty much a brick. Aface, especially going second, is a brick. Like, a lot of these cards are at least, like Scourge and Aface, they're bricks going second. And then going first, they're not actual gas you want to draw, you'd rather search them instead. So I think that you would benefit from playing like a cleaner type of list, or figuring out a better fusion between those two archetypes. Okay, so this guy says Saint and Moa are free slots, and Debtors is for Fua and Field Spell Lock. The Blazar package is just to make the end board better. So the Debtors thing, for people who like haven't read the card, has an effect where you can special summon one of the creatures from Grave, one of the Azamina cards, which is pretty good for Ilia Sylvia because that card doesn't have to be fusion summoned to use this effect, whereas like Sol and Murcielago do. But okay, so let's see. So 1 Diabels, 1 Adjudicator, still playing Esteller and still playing Rusia. I feel like the Esteller is a much worse choice than the Rusia is. But again, because there's no rank 4 here, I'm not really sold on the Rusia. I don't think it's bad. I'm just not sold on it. And I think you could debate like what else would go into this slot instead. So here we have, is there a Chorozo in here? No, I was going to say, okay, because if there was a Chorozo, then you could easily say that you should replace the Esteller with another Witch. And if there was a Jura in here, then, you know, maybe you could say that the Rusia makes a lot more sense because you might not always want to use the Sylvie from Grave, the one where you shuffle back the Arciela to summon the Sylvie, to put it on board and turn that and the Black Witch into Jura. You might not always want to do that. You often in certain lines will want to bring out the Sylvie from Grave so that you have a tribute for Deception because you don't want to use other bodies from your hand. So I could totally see that if you're playing Jura, the Rusia would be a lot more valuable because you don't want to use your Grave Rusia resource on the Hallowed Tribute, and so you're saving your Rusia for the Synchro Summon of Jura. But, you know, if you're not playing Jura, I guess that doesn't really matter. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like if there's no, like, actual game plan for the Rusia, maybe it's not worth including here. Okay, what else? So, I'm not sold on the Debtors. You know, if you have a game plan for it, I think that's good. You know, if there's, as long as there's a reason that you're actually playing the card that makes sense, okay. But, I don't know. I think I would prefer it in the side. I don't really have much thoughts on the Crimson Blazer, the Crimson Dragon Blazar package. I feel like it's obviously very strong, and if you have enough flex in the extra deck, then it's not really win more because you don't have to go into it as part of your normal game plan. It's more like if you're also playing Fiendsmith stuff, it's like, you know, it's harder to argue for the inclusion of those cards. Okay, so now he says, I also thought about Fiendsmith version, but I don't really know if the deck list is correct. And so here we see that there is no Esteller and no Rusia, which I think is good. There's 1 tracked. I think 2 tracked is better. The overall ratios look pretty decent to me, though, like in terms of engine to non-engine. Again, 1 Diabels, 1 Adjudicator. I don't think it's really a problem to go to 45 in this version with the triple field spell. If you really care about consistency going above 40, you could consider Set Rotation and Chicken Game. Obviously, like if you're playing the Delta package, that's a totally different deck, but that makes Set Rotation particularly strong. And Set Rotation is one of the things that can make your Adjudicator live on your own turn 1, so I kind of like that. Okay, what do we have in here? So I love the Wave Hiking Caesar because it doesn't shuffle back the materials, so your Requiem and the Lacrima are still engraved, so that you get the... Oh wait, there's no Desiree. You honestly could play Desiree, because you don't have to ever make it. You don't have to ever, you don't have to play sequence. You could just use it if, you know, if you already have the Lacrima and the Requiem that are going to be engraved because you're making Wave King every single turn. I feel like you could just use that little resource loop there, because that's another layer that's pretty hard for your opponent to interact with. And yeah, especially if you don't have like Woes or Aface in your, well, you haven't shown a side, but in your side deck, for when you're going first, you surely want, you know, some other harder to interact with layers. So that's my main comment there. And then for the last one, he says, enjoy and having fun seeing this. So this is a 60 card list. Okay, so first of all, so this is Alliance Insight. The first thing that I noticed is that there are cash cards in here, but there's no Jura in the extra deck. And I feel like if you're going to go through the trouble of playing Unicorn, which is super popular right now because Detonator's at 1, and the Malice players only play their boss monsters at 1, that you could at least play a Jura, because that'll give you, you know, the 7 plus the 4 into Jura, and that's like kind of free, like especially if you, is there a birth in here? Yeah, there is a birth in here. So like if you're going to all the trouble of making birth, I guess you could just leave the Kashtira monster on field, but you know, Drew is also an option. I think that this has like a slightly worse issue with card quality than the other 60 card list, because this one is playing stuff like Small World, which is really a low quality type card in terms of that the card economy is not good. And I think if you want to see your other cards that bad, you should probably just play less bad quality cards and more good quality cards. Like obviously the Fiendsmith stuff is amazing. The Kashtira stuff you could say is like a great meta call, so I don't want to say it's not good. But the main difference between the Kashtira stuff and like the Fiendsmith stuff, or the like the Millennium stuff with that Doom Dragon tech into Zombie Vampire, is those packages, your game plan doesn't change whether you draw them or not. Like the Fiendsmith stuff, you can always go closed heaven if you don't draw them. The Doom Dragon tech stuff, you're still doing the same game plan. It's just easier if you draw them or not. Whereas the cash stuff changes the game plan a little bit. And so I don't really like that, because it makes a deck that already can be somewhat high rolly a little bit more high rolly because you have to draw it. So yeah, that's what I think about that. What else? In terms of like the bricks in here, so there's a Morian, but that's kind of standard. There's the Aphis and Sinful Swallows, the White Forest. So I feel like, obviously, if you're playing 60, you have a little bit more leeway to play more bricks. Cards especially that are bricky going second. But I think you can't combine that. You can't say, like, I'm going to draw the bricks less often because I'm at 60, but also play bad cards like Small World. So yeah, the Metaltronus I think is actually like pretty cool. Like it's good that it's a spell for us, because it's like, you know, in tough spots you have something to discard if you're really, really forced to, even though that's not good to do. There is no detonator here for the Metaltronus, but because you are playing Nib, you know, you have a target that can at least negate the detonator, and I guess there's not really much they can do usually. So yeah, so that's my comment on that. I think that's going to be all for this one. I think probably the which list did I like the most? Maybe it's something that has to not contain a stellar. Maybe it's this one. I just personally like the Magistus stuff. I think it's very cool. I think it's also like a little bit unexpected. You can catch your opponent off guard. You know, it's like a bit of like some rogue bonus where your opponent might be a little bit confused. So anyhow, thanks for everyone who contributed. If you guys want to also contribute and have feedback, feel free to join the Discord. I'll be making more videos soon. Thanks for watching.